Welcome to episode 100 of the Icehouse podcast. I'm Bryar Stewart, the community manager, and today I have Liz Wotherspoon with me, the chief executive of the Icehouse. And this is a really special conversation. Obviously, 100 episodes is quite significant. We're going to unpack the impact that the Icehouse has had over the last 21 years, some common themes and learnings from 100 episodes with amazing business owners and leaders, and then also looking at the future. What is the current state of play, and what are our SME community looking forward to in the future of doing business? But this podcast started in May 2020 with the purpose to share the stories of our community, our alumni, our business owners, our leaders, doing incredible things to inspire other owners and leaders, and to raise the profile of their untold stories, their stories of grit and passion and just what they bring to their communities. So let's get into it. Welcome, Liz. Thank you for being here. It's so cool to be discussing not only the learnings from doing 100 episodes of the Icehouse podcast, but also 21 years of the Icehouse. Like, that is ridiculously significant. I've got my party blazer on for it, actually. I thought I'd wear my celebratory blazer, so that's what we've done.
Good stuff.
But it's a real privilege to have this conversation with you today, and wanted to ask you a big question to start things off, and that is, what impact has the Icehouse had on SMEs over the last 21 years?
It is kind of epic to be sitting here doing something for the 100th time. Not me doing it for 100th time. You, yes. Me, no. But to then reflect on what difference we've made. And I think from the very beginning in 2001, the people whose vision the Icehouse was did it because we wanted to build an ecosystem that would nurture New Zealand SMEs. And so our purpose from the start has been to help New Zealand businesses achieve the potential we know they have, but don't always realize. And in doing so, to make New Zealand a better, more prosperous, sustainable place to live. And so what impact have we had? We've worked with over 4,000 business owners in our time. Those are established Kiwi business owners, and I'm going to talk about the Icehouse from that lens, or with that lens, rather than the ventures or startup side. And I think, there's data that we've collected over the years specific to the revenue growth of those businesses, the full-time employee numbers growth of those businesses, and we know, how much those businesses have generated in total revenue and in export revenue, and the number of people that are employed in those businesses, and all of the numbers are significant. But I think, for me, the most important impact that we've had is creating a community of people who have a relationship with us, and because of that, we're better and they're better for it. We learn from them and they learn from us. But more recently, the focus goes to how do we keep that community connected to us, but also how do we enable that community to be even more connected to each other and to create that peer-to-peer thing. Because one of the things I think we can continue to do to play our role in transforming the SME sector is to get them focused on the things that are important to them, and therefore to New Zealand as a country and an economy. And we know how much learning can come from engaging with your peers and being prepared to be vulnerable because it's safe, to share the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, in doing so, just create better businesses and better business owners.
Yeah. And through that, better communities, because of the impact that they have through their communities. It's outstanding. And it's been such a privilege to be able to, and I know we're going to talk about, what some of the key themes were that came through the podcast over the last 2 years now. We started this podcast in May 2020, and, just what's happened in those 2 years is so significant. But the grit and the resilience and, of our community, it actually makes me emotional because I'm just like, they are the backbone of this economy and the community.
backbone and they're the unsung heroes. And we saw it from the very beginning. I don't know why they're kind of sometimes mid-sized, Kiwi businesses are overlooked. They're not startups, and therefore they're not kind of as sexy as...
Yeah, that's it. That's how I try to explain it to people. I'm like, they're just not as sexy, but so significant.
But they're so significant. They're not enterprise-sized businesses, so they don't necessarily have the wherewithal in terms of size and scale to sway regulators and so on and so forth. But they deserve attention. They've got the power and the potential to really... they do make a significant contribution, and they have the power and potential to do even more. And I just feel blessed to be part of an organization that's recognized that from day one, and 21 years later is celebrating that continued focus on, as you say, and I just said what we consider to be the unsung heroes of New Zealand.
Yeah,
from an economic perspective.
Yeah, totally. And you've been here for, is it 16 years?
Yeah, it'll be 17 years in January. Who thought? Who knew?
Did you ever think you'd work for a company for 16 years?
Never. I mean, I guess, does anyone? I don't know. But it's such a contagious place to be.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
I think when you're someone like me who's, I guess most of my career has been driven by feeling a sense of purpose in what I do. It's just felt right. And it's a really different organization than the one I joined. I mean, we're, as you would expect, we certainly haven't stood still for 16 years. So that's created enough challenge for me in the job to kind of keep going. But you watch the podcasts, the 99 podcasts that came before this, and you listen to our customers and our, the Kiwi business stories that, come out of that. And you have to feel a sense of pride that what we do makes a difference, but that the people who experience it are just so awesome and so amazing, and so prepared to embrace the challenge, because part of our role is to provoke and to challenge, not to tell them what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. Totally. And that isn't always easy for them. And yet when you listen to the things they've told you in those podcasts, you go, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So, Bryar.
I know this is coming.
Yeah. You've been on one side of these, and now it's time to turn the tables and ask you some questions.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've put everyone else in the ring of fire for this amount of time. I'm like, okay, it is my turn.
Your turn. All right, so let's get into some questions.
Awesome.
Probably obvious one to start with, but what are the key learnings from hosting the Icehouse podcast series?
I actually get emotional thinking about it, because I think I say this to the guests when I jump, whether it's jumping on Zoom or having a conversation in person like this. I'm like, can you believe this is my job? Like, can you? And they're like, not really, Brian. I'm like, I know, it's pretty amazing, right? And to have had 2 years of the privilege of sitting with a business owner or leader for 30 minutes to 45 to an hour, depending on where that conversation goes. I have sat in rooms and I've had tears. I've had people exit business, pass on through family generations. The stories that from these unsung heroes are so significant, and it's such a privilege for me every day as a host to know this week I'm going to have another cool conversation with someone that's out there in the community doing some pretty cool stuff. So, if I can start that question with anything, it's the fact that I feel really honoured to be able to do that and have their time. And I think one of the points I wrote down here is that the SME stories really do go untold. And so as a host, as I started to realise that probably sort of, I don't know, let's say 30 episodes in, I'm like, hold on, there's some real magic here, and the stories aren't being shared in too many other places. Providing a space for them to unpack what they've experienced as a business owner or a leader in a safe place. That's one of my biggest focuses, is how can we keep this a comfortable, safe place? Like, I feel way more nervous today being on this side of it than I do being on the question side of it. So I'm getting a little bit of an idea of what my guests feel like when they log into Zoom or jump into that meeting with me. How can I make them feel comfortable? How can I create a space where they can share what they've gone through as an individual and with their community? So sharing those unsung SME stories is an amazing learning from my podcast, from the podcast, from hosting the podcast. I've also learned just from a host perspective, and I know the questions coming is more around, advice from SMEs and what they've been saying. But podcasting is an incredible community building initiative and tool. And it's been really cool now chatting to, and I was telling you this morning, but chatting to alumni who are going, hold on, what if we do a podcast about some great things in our industry or sharing our stories? Because every business has a story or a community to share the stories of. And so I feel like it's been a really cool way to engage our community, whether that's people we haven't been in touch with for 5 years or 10 years for whatever reason, alumni, or, they're a big part or they've just jumped off the program and they're buzzing and rearing to go. Every angle's a good one, and it's just a really cool way to engage people within our community. And being a community manager, that's a big part of what I do, so it's been really cool to see that. So that's more from like a host perspective, but yeah.
Because they're a humble lot, aren't they? And so
humble.
Telling their stories isn't necessarily second nature to them. And so, you as the host have to create an environment where they kind of feel okay.
Yeah.
And don't feel like they're bragging or, because that's not necessary. Not all of them. Some of them, they all have, a level of ego. But, as I say, most are quite a humble lot. So, and I think the podcasts have given them, a vehicle to express some of their journey and their story, and therefore feel some pride.
Absolutely, yeah. And then equip them with something that they can share with their community. That's not like, I recorded this in a room by myself, and here's a piece of content. But it's, hey, this has got done through an external, community, the Icehouse. I'd love for you to hear my story too, and they're quite proud of it. And if I can get to an end of a convo and they go, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought, thanks for that, Bryar, or whatever, that's a win. I'm like, cool, they feel comfortable to share their story.
Exactly. And an opportunity to share it with their team, because they don't often do that the way they should. That sense of remembering where they've come from. So
yeah, totally.
Cool. So what, you kind of alluded to it a minute ago, but what has been the most common advice from owners and leaders that you've picked up?
Lots. And it's so interesting because the last 2 years have been massive, right? They've been massive 2 years for our business owners. So there's always been little themes that have come through, whether that's themes of challenges or whatever, but hiring well, and then trusting your team to do the job is advice that comes out all the time. And every time I hear it, I'm like, yeah, there's some gold in there. And you can see the weight come off the business owner or leader when they realise that they've done that, and the weight that's on the business owner if they realise that's a real struggle for them and they need to do it because they've heard it from this person or that person or a podcast even. So yeah, hiring well and then trusting teams is definitely a big one. Another one is focusing on building a really strong culture, not just Friday work drinks, but a strong culture, that's put through, which takes time and is not easily done, and looks different in different seasons. Culture looks very different, still doable, but very different when we're all stuck at home in a lockdown versus, okay, now the world's changed again and we're hybrid, and okay, now we've got people working in different parts of New Zealand or the world. So yeah, it looks different at different times, but crafting and working consistently on that strong culture is really, really key and comes out in quite a lot of conversations. Yeah, another one is back yourself and find a network community of people that champion you. And it's really cool when then that follows by like the Icehouse, or I found my one with the Icehouse, through their cohort or events or whatever it looks like for them. But those are probably the three most common advice that business owners want to sort of express to anyone listening. And I feel like whenever I ask them that question, they know they have a real responsibility to go, cool, I've got a bit of a platform here where I can tell them tell whoever's listening what I've learned. And Yeah, that's probably the 3 key things that come from that.
Awesome. And what about things they've talked about in terms of most common takeaways from the owner-manager program or the leadership development program?
Yeah, totally. This one really shocked me when I heard it the first time. As not a business owner or yet. But finances. Finances is the key takeaway from owner-manager program and leadership development program. Anyone listening that's done the leadership development program, I think it's that finance, stimulator game, and the owner-manager program, definitely a lot of conversation around knowing your numbers. And then obviously we've got a workshop, a 2-day workshop around knowing your numbers specifically. But that really surprised me. I was like, I didn't realize that would be something. But a lot of them have said, no, I needed to really know my finances to take us from here, to take us to the next level. So that was a really big takeaway. Another one's back to the culture thing. Just, from day dot, I think Icehouse is really focused on explaining values and helping businesses to not just have a set of values that are on the wall and you refer to every now and then, but values and culture like within the organisation, which you'd know all about because you're the one that actually presents it on OMP and etc. But yeah, so that's a big one that comes across in the podcast. And yeah, the other one I popped down in my notes is resilience and wellbeing. Yeah, resilience and wellbeing, and that was massive during the last couple of years too, of sort of re-looking at what that looks like and making it more of a priority for business owners and leaders. I don't know if you have any thoughts on those things, but yeah.
I think it's quite validating because if you think philosophically about the Icehouse and what's driven us from the beginning, those 3 circles, which we now allude to 4 circles, but 3 of them have been with us since the beginning, the business, you and the business and you. Yeah. Those takeaways sit in one of those 3 circles. The resilience and well-being is about them, and we've always acknowledged that one of the most unique things about an owner-manager, someone with the kind of grit that the people we work with have around that passion and perseverance. This is not overnight, stuff. This isn't, and so they work hard. They work really hard. And so resilience is an important lesson. What's been the consequence of doing that on their well-being and their health and the quality of their relationships. And so holding that mirror up for them in the process. And that's true in the leadership development program too, because, they're working for owners.
Yeah.
Finances doesn't, it surprised me at the beginning. And then I thought, no. I mean, in the program, you have to be conscious that there could be people on one end or the other of the continuum, people who might read balance sheets for fun at this end, and people when for whom when you say the word finance, they start to quiver because they it scares living daylights out of them. But no matter what, every leader and owner in a business needs to be able to look at the numbers and understand the story they're telling. And so pragmatically, that's what we've been trying to do: get them, not turn them into financial controllers or CFOs or whatever, but just help them to understand the numbers and what they're telling them around the health and well-being of the business. So
and to know enough, right, so that they can have that conversation with their CFO
and not be intimidated by their accountant.
Yes,
true.
Massive.
Be able to, because the numbers, of course, give you a view of the past, but you want to use them to make decisions around what you do in the future, and that's really where they're important. So. And as you say, culture to me, it's, and I think for them, I'm sure, listening to the podcast, it's come through. They get, a business has a culture, no matter what. It's just whether it's one they want or not. And so intentionality is where we, again, try and get them to focus on, is the culture what you want it to be? And if not, why not? And what are you doing to change that? And it takes constant discipline and focus. It doesn't. You don't get it right and then expect it to stay that way without having to work at it. So.
Yeah, totally. And I know this will sound like a plug, but another key takeaway is definitely community. They leave with a cohort of great connections, great friends, people they can message or call, within seconds, as you've seen for 16 plus years, of these deep relationships that come from that cohort. that is one of, if not the biggest takeaway for these business owners and leaders.
Yeah, they've got a network they can lean into, and they've learned from each other, as much if not more than from those of us standing in the front of the room. And do our egos get in the way of that? Nah, I don't care. As long as they're building those relationships and maintaining them, we've achieved something with and for them. So
Totally.
I don't want them to stand and say, I learned the most from whoever that was that the Icehouse brought into the room. So it's great.
And the stories of this person's on my board now, and I changed accountants to this person because they were on my program. It's like they've left with a community. It's lonely at the top. Oh. It is lonely at the top, whether you're a leader or an owner. It can be hard to feel like you've got someone to talk to. And their biggest takeaway is that they now have a group of 25, 30 plus people that they can talk to. It's pretty significant.
Yeah, because they're not alone. I mean, these people have wonderful families and great networks of friends and all the rest of it. But those aren't the people that they necessarily turn to when stuff's gotten tough in the business, or tough for them at that moment in time, or they're trying to make a decision, and and yet a cohort or the community that is the Icehouse, who've been on a similar journey, whether that's the leadership development program or the owner manager program, they know they can pick up the phone and ring those people, and they realize they're not the only one that may have dealt with this or felt like this or whatever. So
totally. Cool. Yeah, so cool.
Most common book or podcast recommendations. I mean, again, I think some of them are innately, curious and therefore big readers and podcast, listeners. But any themes there?
Yeah, just a lot of Jim Collins and Simon Sinek. I went through a few of them, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, cool. And I think they've obviously had that input from being on program, and also they're just two incredible, great business leaders. So I think a lot of that. Brene Brown is another one. I know you love her.
I love her.
Yeah, she's brilliant. So I think a lot of those themes coming through. Don't know if anyone's heard of, or I've definitely listened to Diary of a CEO, but really great conversations with, again, business leaders or CEOs around their worlds and the vulnerabilities in that. And I think that's a really cool message to share. So that's definitely come up. But yeah, lots of Jim Collins, Simon Sinek, which is all good things.
Is all good things.
Yeah.
And it's funny how they remain so relevant. If you look at Jim Collins, and some of his material through this last 2 years of, the disruption of COVID, that great by choice content is probably even more relevant than it's ever been, because I think we've thought about resilience in the context of us as individuals, but it's taken on a new meaning when we think about what makes a resilient business.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Jim Collins and Simon Sinek and Brene Brown, all of them, that we also talk about, just have a good sense of what's important and has been for a long time, but what has come to the fore now. So
totally. And within those sort of key lines that always pop up, there's some real industry specific podcasts that people are listening to, or I'm sure there'd be some some nice books that they read on the beach and things too that they probably don't pop up straight when they're on the podcast. But yeah, I think people do enjoy learning, and whether that's a podcast, reading an article or a book, I think our community enjoy sort of taking in stories and learning more about others and being inspired by those stories, So it's good to hear.
Yeah, it is. It is. Any misconceptions that you've picked up or heard about the Icehouse that have come to light in the via the podcast?
The biggest one is that. How do I word this? It's the fact that the Icehouse or the program may not be specific to my industry or understand my industry. So what I hear a lot is they go, I wasn't too sure. So I came on the program and I was a little bit like, well, what are these business owners going to know about the challenges I'm going through? And then within 5, 10, 15 minutes on that block 1, they realised that every industry has the same challenges, pain points, can relate on such a deep level. And that comes up in most conversations with on podcasts, is that idea that, I was just a bit hesitant. I wasn't too sure that they'd understand what I'm going through. And fair enough, we're all in our worlds trying to work out our biggest challenges and things. But the freedom and the excitement when they realise they're in a room of business owners that totally understand what they're going through, whether that's, we see it all the time. You see it a lot more than I would, but an accountant and a plumber, or, just all these different industries put together, that they may look at a business profile and go, hold on, how am I going to relate to this person? They walk in and they can become instant friends. One of my favourites is, a social, a marketing agency and like a panel beater. And I've seen these two together and they're like the bestest of friends. I'm like,
I know exactly who you're talking
about. I'm like, this is awesome. Completely different industries, but you guys understand the same things, have similar challenges, just the leading people. And I think the biggest challenges are at the moment staffing, leading people, and supply chain. And so that comes up quite a lot. And I know that's not a misconception, but a lot of people go, okay, well, how are people going to understand that for me? The Icehouse works with every industry. And I feel like that's a misconception that comes up, but within seconds is kind of debunked for them when they're sitting in the room and bouncing ideas off with other leaders. You'd see it all the time, I'm sure.
Well, we've kind of used to feel like we had to defend it in the early days. Our industry. The fact that we are industry agnostic, whether that was in sales conversations or whether it was on program. But they're convinced pretty early on, as you say, Bryar, that we actually do have that right. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, because the reality is the opportunities and the challenges are not that different. No. And so, the idea that they get that, and often if they're talking to other people that have done it, they can help with that misconception before they've walked in the room, but usually they need to figure that out themselves, and so once they're in there, they get it. Yeah. I think the other one that, has come through a little bit in the podcasts is, that am I going to be good enough? That imposter phenomenon that is alive and well and living in the heads of so many of them. How am I going to stack up against my peers? Am I going to be out of my depth, or are they going to be smarter, better business people than me?
Totally.
And the reality is it doesn't make any difference.
Honestly, that's up there too, and I've got it under the next question, which is common traits, but let's talk about imposter syndrome for a little bit, because it comes up in 90% of the podcast, I would say, this feeling of, I had a bit of imposter syndrome or whatever. And they think they're I'm not saying this in a mean way, but they think they're the only one that's ever said that on a podcast, that I had imposter syndrome, and they're not. It blows my mind how many people I've talked to have really struggled with that, and was a big barrier for them in terms of feeling like they deserve to be in the room. And that's always blows my mind, because these people they're doing amazing things. They're carrying communities. And so when I think imposter syndrome, I'm just like, wow, really, you? I hear stories of people seeing the business profiles before going on, stalking them on LinkedIn and things, and going, I don't deserve to be in a room with this person. And then within a block, they're the bestest of friends. But it's definitely a misconception that people think that they can't be in the room, they're not worthy enough. It's just the human in us, right? And imposter syndrome can unfortunately get to everyone, but that's been a very interesting discussion, and I like sharing those stories in the podcast, because the more people that can hear a podcast with an amazing business owner or leader going, I had imposter syndrome, or I still struggle with it every day and it's a daily decision, it kind of like unlocks something in other people and gives them freedom to go, oh, well, if Liz struggles with it, then it's okay if I had that moment of, so not throwing you in with that, but you know what I mean, like just an example. So it is. Another one is based in Auckland only. We are a nationwide organisation, and more seeing just some incredible business owners from across all of New Zealand jump on our programs. We've got a travelling program that even touches down in Queenstown, so why would you not want to do that? It's pretty good. So that's cool. And then, we've had that convo about, I'm stealing this completely from you, but when we get asked how many women we have on program, our answer is not enough. And it continues to be, right? But I think that's a misconception is, some of the ladies I've talked to going, okay, is this for me? And jumping on and going, actually, I fit in right here. I fit in here, and we're seeing some amazing women jump on our programs and bouncing ideas around and sharing their wisdom and their gold. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's a the diversity thing is just a big focus of ours. But in the environment, we, when it's not an issue.
Totally.
Again, I would love to see more women on the programs. But when they're there, they're huge contributors to the conversation, which is why they bring just another dynamic. As does diversity of thinking, as does ethnic diversity. So it's not just gender.
Yeah, totally. Totally. But I'd say that's what majority of the misconceptions, of the Icehouse and of them have come through the podcast.
Cool. And what about go back to the, imposter syndrome thing, or common traits that come out in the business owners and the leaders that in the conversations that you've had with them. Yeah,
this is where imposter syndrome was top of my list. It's just like I said, it comes up in most conversations. So it definitely is a common trait. But I think, like I was alluding to before, the community that then comes around that, and the vulnerability that comes from a conversation of like, oh, you also had a look at everyone on LinkedIn and, felt a bit scared, or what's the other line? I felt like I was rocking up to my first day of school, or, those sorts of things. Being able to just sort of share that with the, share that with the people and unlock sort of the fear that comes with imposter syndrome. It sort of is gone pretty quickly. But I also think it's something that these owners are dealing with and leaders are dealing with every day in some cases where it's, just having to back themselves and believe in themselves and have the confidence that, they're leading this organisation for a reason and they've got great skills and, and gifts that they're sort of born to use. So I think I could go on for ages about that because I'm just like, I just want to, champion these business owners. And so that's, again, why it's so important to share these stories because I've said that. But another common trait, and I mentioned this right at the beginning, I think, but the grit and resilience. It's just like, I haven't met a group of people that have had to deal with so much and dealt with it so well, and every person I've talked to, I leave just going, man, they just carry it so lightly. And I know it wouldn't always be like that, but they're committed to carrying it on behalf of others too, on behalf of the teams and the families that they're supporting. So that's definitely like a common trait. And then the other one I've got here is that they're very community driven. They exist to make a difference in their community and in the economy and in their local community and their families, and they're extremely community driven. They exist to bring to have impact to the people around them and to bring products and services that solve problems. And that isn't easy, but they have the grit and they keep going. Also they're after really valuable and deep connections. Business owners don't have a lot of time on their hands. They are busy people, and that's a massive reason of why I feel so grateful that they'd spend the time to unpack their journey. But they are after really valuable and deep connections with people. And that's just really special to be part of. So, yeah, I don't know. That makes sense?
It does make sense. And the community thing, I think, is worth kind of going back to, and mentioned the 3 circles before. And, of course, as you know, we've added that 4th one, you and the community. And we did it not because we were kind of telling them they had to or preaching they should do, be active in their communities or do more, because it was just to recognize that they do.
Yeah, totally.
And it manifests itself in all sorts of different ways. Some of it's sponsorships, some of it's, just participating, in different ways in their communities. But, with the schools and, it plays out in so many different ways, but it just seems to come naturally to them.
Oh, yeah.
And they do it because they want to, and it's right, and they know they can make a difference.
Yeah.
And
it goes
so we just want to recognize it.
Totally. And it goes back to that humble thing. They are humble. They don't want heaps and heaps of recognition for it.
Well, in fact, they usually don't want any.
Yeah. Flying under the radar in a major way. But that's been a massive learning for me, but also a very common trait is that the heart of these business owners is to have impact in their community. And like you said, whether that looks like actual donations or sponsorship or just providing these brilliant services and products that are solving really big problems in their community, that's where it all comes from. And so, humble bunch. It's pretty cool to be part of it. So thanks to anyone listening for listening to my learnings, but also if you have been on the podcast, thank you so much for your time. It's not something that I take or hold lightly, so I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to tell your story specifically. And if you'd like to be on the podcast, email me. I'll put it somewhere in the caption. But do email me, because I want to share every of our alumni stories. Anyone that's interested and keen to be on the podcast, I'd love to share it. So if you're thinking right now, okay, that's me, then get in touch, and I can't wait to sort of raise a profile of you and your business. It's cool. It's exciting.
Good stuff.
Cool. Now I'll happily switch around again. Now I understand why the guests are like, can I prep answers? I'm like, yes, you can prep. But I'll go back to where I'm comfortable. No, it's cool. We had a really great opportunity to send a survey, and you may want to speak to this more, Liz, but send a survey to our community, our alumni, around to get a really good idea of the state of play for SMEs right now and the thinking. And I know there's more, we'll be releasing that in more depth in the data at a later date, but thought this could be a really cool opportunity, 21 years, looking ahead at the future, to get just an overview of what that state of play looks like. Is that cool?
Yeah, sure. And I will maybe provide some context, and this will come out when we do release some of what we learned from it. But the Icehouse has been a voice for small to medium-sized enterprises for a while. And so what I realized, though, is that I hadn't really gone out in the last couple of years to try and get a pulse of where things are at and how businesses are feeling and what they're experiencing. And in order for me to represent that voice in the way that I'm planning to, as a result of having this information, I needed to get a sense of what's going on. So that's why we did it.
Awesome.
And the response was incredible.
It was amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Not just the number of people that completed the survey, but the sentiment expressed by those about how grateful they are that we have asked, and that they're not, many of them wouldn't take the time normally to do it, but because of the intent and the reason for us asking, we got just a wonderful level of response.
Yeah,
and
it was really
yeah,
it was real special. Awesome. I thought, like I said, let's touch base on some of those questions that were asked and the overall themes. Hardest aspects of SME business in the last 12 months.
Yeah, and this will not surprise most listeners, particularly owners who might be tuning into this, but topping the list of, in terms of what has been the hardest aspects for them in the last 12 months is cost increases from suppliers. Again, doesn't matter what industry, that's been significant. Recruitment. So getting enough of the right people in the business, has certainly been hard. As you mentioned before, supply chain and the impact that that's had, supply chain and logistics. Again, that goes back to cost increases, because look at the cost of freight and look at the cost of certain things that these businesses need in order to do what they do. So those are the top three, and a significant percentage of the businesses that responded listed 1, 2, or all three of those as the top of their list.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, paints a picture of the priorities as well for these business owners going into the next 12 months, for sure. SME's state of mind when thinking about the next 12 months and the New Zealand economy. It's a big one.
Yeah, so this surprised me and didn't surprise me. I think 74% of the people that responded to the Pulse survey feel nervous about the next 12 months. These are business owners who, as we were talking about before, have, run their businesses, had their businesses, led their businesses through, global financial crises, through all sorts of other, challenging economic, situations. And yet there's that percentage of people feeling nervous about the next 12 months, to me, is really significant. And I think nervous comes from, and I'm going to dig into the open-ended, because there's, how are you feeling was the question, and then additional comments. When we finish digging into the answers, we can report this with more certainty. But I think that the level of nervousness has to do with the uncertainty about what's going to be different as a result of this disruption than the kinds of disruptions we've experienced before. Yeah. So,
but that was a significant one, 74%. It's like, okay, that's something, looking into.
And 42%, which again is, less than half, but 42% think that the next 12 months in business are going to be worse than the 12 months prior.
Oh.
And remember, Bryar, you know this, but if we look at our customers, some of them really were slammed by COVID. I mean, if you were in the hospitality or tourism game, and we have business owners and businesses in those industries and in that game, this was significant in terms of the financial impact on the business. But we also have businesses up the other end who, have had significant revenue increases.
Absolutely.
And where the opportunities are just almost more than they can handle. And so both created challenges.
Totally.
And so you need to look at those two responses about how nervous they feel and the fact that they think it's going to get worse, knowing that the respondents were at both ends of this.
Yeah, and could be coming from completely different lenses, where my challenges are now staffing because I've got so much going on because we've grown so much or whatever. So, that's a really good point. Positives and negatives, for sure. Biggest fears, concerns, and frustrations with the SME community at the moment.
So this list is a little bit longer than the list around hardest aspects of the business. I mean, cost increases stay right at the top.
Yeah.
But coming in kind of a close second is government decisions. Again, that's just the reality of them not knowing what, those decisions might be and what the impact, that might have.
Totally.
The economy going into a recession is certainly a fear or concern. Recruiting new staff, but also keeping the existing ones, because as talent gets scarcer, probably even more scarce than capital at the minute, as talent gets scarcer, your ability to hang on to the ones you've got so that somebody isn't trying to poach them, maybe pay them more. And those are cost increases too on businesses. It's not just from suppliers. Cost increases are the fact that they have to look at paying people more in order to keep them or get them. Customers being more careful about money and about spending. That's a worry. And again, the supply chain just stays up there for many, if not all of them.
Yeah, it's a really detailed list, and I think anyone listening, would be able to relate to a few of those. And so maybe comforting in ways to know that, you're not the only one to be thinking that, but definitely gives direction around where, the priorities for owners, leaders, and those that have the ability to make change and difference and communicate that, definitely lies, which is cool to hear. Yeah, this is a really interesting one. The culture of teams, are they currently better or worse than they were before COVID?
Phenomenal, because you'd think that people, there is fatigue. People are tired. Not only has it been a tough, 2+ years, but it's also, many of these businesses are working in situations where they're under-resourced. And so people are having to work harder. Remote working has created challenges. You would think that the impact on culture would be, the answer to the question around culture would be that the culture is worse than it was, but it's not.
No, opposite.
It's opposite. The majority of businesses, in response to this question, said that their culture is stronger or better than it was before. And I'm sure that has to do with how hard the owners and leaders in these businesses have worked to ensure that's the case, or to try and, make that be true. But some of it's going to come from feeling like we just all had to just lean in together and, work together. And we saw, be there to support each other, and the business was there to support. I've got to kind of dig into the answers to why that might be the case, but really heartening to see that for the majority, not all, but the majority of them, their cultures are stronger than pre-COVID.
Yeah, and I think that leans into what we were discussing before about how deeply these owners and leaders care about their communities, about their people, being one of their key communities, right? So it's quite cool to see now that they are thinking, better cultures than before COVID.
And do you know what else I think? When we had to be away from work, when we were in lockdowns, but still for those businesses that weren't essential, but were still working, you got a window into people's lives that you might not otherwise have gotten.
Totally.
Because what happens when you're doing a Zoom with your colleagues, or you're, a meeting with someone, and their kids are running in and out of the room, or their dog is leaping up on the table, or they're, you just get a sense of more about who someone is. And so people know each other better or differently.
Totally.
And I guess maybe that's had a positive impact on,
And I think vulnerability came through that, because then it's like, let's not underplay this. Auckland, where it was in a lockdown for 100-something days, through that there are emotional highs and lows with any individual, and times where you say, okay, this is hard. Anyone else finding this really hard, to be stuck in a tiny apartment, or, maybe with, 3 kids and a dog, or, is anyone else struggling here? So I think just the natural vulnerabilities and deepening in relationships.
And empathy.
And empathy. That's it. Empathy. Yeah. From both ends as well, because I think owners, leaders, yes, but then employees that are like, oh, wow, my manager is having to make massive decisions here, or my owner is needing to make really big calls and fund us. And I think it gave empathy on both sides of the business to understand, okay, I don't just rock up here and do 9 to 5 and leave, but how can I keep bringing value to this business so it survives this? I think it band a lot of people together, which is cool.
And I think there were a lot of messages, if owners and leaders, whether they were our podcasts or webinars during the time, or they were just tuning into others, the messages around communication and how important it was that there was no chance that you could over communicate, whether that be to customers or suppliers or your people. You needed to kind of keep those lines of communication wide open. And that's not communicating that you knew what was coming, or you had certainty or clarity around what might be around the corner. Even communicating that you didn't know was a good thing. So I just think all of those things combined, obviously, as a result of at least the folks that answered the survey, suggest that they're better for it from a culture perspective.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, just being real. We all heard the government announcement at the same time, you know, and so what did that then activate in different people, different things? But I think that realness, and there was so much uncertainty that it was like, okay, well, if I can get rid of some uncertainty by over communicating, then that's the best thing to do. And I think we saw that in a lot of business owners and leaders and how they built their communities and their staff teams, which we're seeing now in the numbers.
And I think the other thing before we move off the survey and start to think about wrapping up is it doesn't surprise me, but it's heartening. So again, we've asked in the survey for some thoughts around what they think could be different or change. There could be a lot of angry owners, given the impact that this has had. Whether that's because they've had so much opportunity, that's creating challenges because they can't resource,
Totally.
or whether they've been slammed. But again, our customers are, talk about traits or characteristics. They're generally a pretty cautiously optimistic bunch. And therefore the tone in the open-ended questions in the survey is really constructive and really thoughtful. It's not, a little bit of frustration and anger creeps in every once in a while to some of the answers, but we're human. But they are genuinely interested in changes that will help.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's great stuff.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. Did you want to touch on what SMEs need as valuable support?
Yeah. Again, I think that hasn't changed. And therefore it makes it easier for us to keep doing what comes naturally to us, which is supporting owners and leaders of small to medium-sized enterprises. Celebrating a milestone like a 21st, when you hit it, there's a great temptation to kind of make a list of all the great things that as an organization we've accomplished, and to map out the distance that we've come and celebrate the successes that have brought us so far. But the reality is, and there's nothing wrong with that impulse. I think we've earned the right to kind of do that. But,
yeah, totally.
It's good to, celebrate something that's as remarkable as 2 decades of contribution to an impact on the well-being of, the New Zealand business community. But I think we take a risk in looking backward of becoming kind of introspective, and it's never been in our DNA to exist for our own sake. So when I think about what the businesses that we work with and for need, it continues to be about 4 core things: to learn, to apply that learning, to be held accountable to that learning, to be held accountable to the application of that learning, and to connect.
Yeah.
And so that's the support we will continue to provide, whether that's one-to-many in the way of programs, whether it's one-to-one, whether it's a network and a community where we know people that that might be useful to them. That'll get at the core for us. That'll stay at the core for us. And so, I guess for us, the target isn't 21 or 31 or 41 years. It's I guess our aim is never to be satisfied, to always be learning, growing, and developing ourselves so that we can inspire and encourage the owners that work with us to do the same, to learn, to grow, to develop, and to ensure that we keep innovating so that we're future fit, so that they can be the same. And I think what I just hope for, and I think the podcasts have been, a great, part of our ability to do this is that, we'll continue to be a place of spirited connection and conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool. And I think when I think about it, 21 years, that's so significant. And we're going to do a celebration this week, which I'm looking forward to. Or when you listen to this, it would have happened. Yeah, a party, a bit of a party, which would be cool. But for 21 years, the Icehouse have been like a pillar within the SME community. And that 21 years has seen financial crisis, it's seen economic downturn, it's seen boom times and bust times. and they were still there, and that's what is cool to be part of as you know, working for the Icehouse, but cool for the community to know too, you know, that with any nervousness or fear around the next 12 months, you know, the Icehouse has seen it and supported SMEs through it, and at the heart and core, that's what we're here to do, which is pretty cool to be part of, and I'm excited for the next 21 years. It's going to be good.
Well, and I think we've done a bit of eating our own dog food too over the last couple of years. I mean, you know, as an organization that's fundamentally about bringing people together, I mean, we had our own challenges, and yet it didn't rock us around what was core to our reason for being, which is supporting owner managers. So what did we do? We went online with webinars and we figured out how we could do it. But we'll return and we will continue to do things that are virtual and online because it gives more people access to us. But so much of the magic of what we've been able to achieve in 21 years is because we bring people together.
Yeah.
And so it just feels great to be able to know that we are now, and we can continue to do what we love to do with who we love to do it with, and with who we love to do it for.
That's a nice way to finish up. And just such a privilege to sit here and have a conversation about sort of like the past and the present and also the future. So thanks, Liz, for being on the podcast. The 100th episode, done and dusted. How cool is that?
Before we totally wrap, I need to say thank you to you. 2 years ago, when we started this, it was because we had you, and you said this is a good idea, and let's get going on it. And, you know, 100 podcasts under your belt.
Whoa.
Well done.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.